Hello and welcome to SCRS Talks, provided by the Society for Clinical Research Sites. I'm Jimmy Bechtel, the Chief Site Success Officer with the Society, and today I'm joined by Sean Stanton, the founder and CEO of K2 Medical Research, and Christian Burns, the founder and president of Populace Health, here to talk about how their collaboration is advancing work being done in the CNS therapeutic area space. Really excited to have the two of them here. Before we get into learning about what they've done collaboratively here, we'll start with introductions, learn a little bit more about each of them and their organizations respectfully. So Christian, why don't you start us off?
Perfect. Hey, everybody. Nice to speak with you and have you listen to us. Sean and I go way back. We've known each other for at least 20 years, at least since I've been in the space. So excited for this discussion today, but I've been in the industry now for about 20 years. Populace Health is newer. We're about 2.5 years in, and we specialize by having a independently owned network of sites in 3 countries. And we do CNS among many other therapeutic areas.
Thanks, Christian. Sean, why don't you take it from there?
Sean Stanton. I've been in the industry for 32 years, I believe. Now, I started in academics, started a site network, which still exists today, called CNS Healthcare in 1998. I did that for about a decade, specialized in psychiatry only when I was there, and then built Compass Research, which was a multi-therapeutic, first in human, all the way through phase 3. That was acquired by BioClinica in 2016, and I became part of a group that had 28 sites in 14 countries, helped oversee operations in that capacity. Did that was another 10 or 12 years. And then this new thing with K2 started in 2021. And right now it's on the eastern part of the U.S., but our goal is to be a best-in-class U.S. site network.
Excellent. So we know that your organizations individually play distinct but complementary roles in the CNS drug development space. So can you, maybe Sean, start us off and give us a quick snapshot of how your organization is specifically tackling some of the problems and what you're setting out to solve in that space?
I've always been involved with brain, kind of looking at it as almost like the last frontier. There's so many diseases that don't have cures or treatments. So I've always been drawn to the brain. So there's therapeutic areas like psychiatry or mental health, Alzheimer's, anything that degenerates in the brain, and then pain. Those 3 areas we've been focusing on. I'm drawn to it because they're hard. It's not like, vaccines or healthy populations. There's just an unmet need in finding treatments for all of these diseases. And there's not a really strong network in neurodegeneration. And that's one of the things we're setting out to try to do, create a network of sites that can help speed drug development in that neurodegenerative space.
Excellent. Christian, from your perspective as well, how does Populace Health distinctly yet complementary in solving some of the challenges here?
It's funny though, based off what Sean even was just saying, CNS is, especially psychiatry, it's like the cool thing to talk about now. I like Sean. Something continues to always draw me to CNS. In my last company, we always specialized in CNS, but the complexity, just all the staff you need, but it's also really rewarding and a lot of fun. But today, it's an exciting space to be in because it's absolutely booming, specifically within psychiatry. And when I say that, I guess as I'm about to take a flight down to obesity kind of conference, I know the 3 questions or 4 questions that sponsors are going to want to talk to me about. Psychiatry and neurology, it's just very different. It feels, it's a lot, you can't predict those same questions. But having said that, it's just a special part of the industry to be in, and it's a great time. So now to specifically answer the question, Populace is in this unique position to help a variety of different types of experience and sites. On one side, the problem in the industry is we don't have enough great CNS sites, and I'm saying that broadly. It's mostly psychiatry sites in specific geographic areas. So Populace can help them implement a roadmap to be successful. And on the flip side, we have significant experience at a lot of sites that have been doing research for a number of years, like the K2 sites, where, they can leverage each other as a network should. So the experienced sites help the inexperienced sites in just about everything to operationalize the study. So Populace kind of sits in the center of that and hopefully is continuing to help bring in net new staff that have been doing research for a while, but potentially not in CNS, along the same lines, doing significant research and helping them get better opportunities and be more successful.
It's great points, guys. And we know CNS is challenging, right? It's a pretty tough therapeutic area for a lot of the reasons that you guys mentioned, but probably a lot of other reasons as well. We know the nature of the conditions in which need to be treated here are much less straightforward than other therapeutic areas. And there's a lot of ambiguity and challenge that comes along with that. So, Christian, what drew you to that? You mentioned that you continue to go back to CNS and it just always has drawn you back regardless of where you've been in your career. So what continues to draw that space and what makes you believe that there can be a difference that's made there?
Well, if I start with being fairly broad, as I get older, I continue to think like, what do I really like to do, just regardless? And one of those things I think is just connecting, like being a connector of people and connector of things. And this CNS team, I'll say the CNS teams, whether it's the sites or the sponsors or the CROs, they tend to leave one company and go to another company within the space. Sean, I'm sure you've always seen that. Like the relationships you build in the space, they tend to be forever lasting because you don't really tend to leave. There is something special within CNS, probably like there would be in oncology. And because of that complexity and the business that has to be set up, I was just saying actually to someone this morning who's getting into CNS, and they are a site. And when you train someone to think CNS, they're thinking like those types of therapeutic areas where they might not have to put as much into the infrastructure like you would for something else. So like even the investment, the team, the experience of the team, the recruitment strategy, among many things. But the point is, it's incredibly rewarding. And then the other side, Sean and I and K2, they tend to be the group that we use when we need 1-2 sites for like an Alzheimer's trial, could be Parkinson's. Sean and his team have great personnel that can speak the weeds of trials, to say the least, and tend to be very good executors of those studies. So when I'm kind of talking about the various experience here, I always see Sean, especially in neuro, he knows his material.
Sean, how about your perspective on that? I mean, what keeps you going in the CNS beyond maybe some of the trauma bonding that Christian kind of mentioned?
My family's personally touched too, just by like the Alzheimer's space. So this, to me, there's a personal element. And then I think we're on the brink of discovery. Some great things are going to happen in this space where we might be able to not cure, but really find really, really solid solutions in neurodegeneration. Mental health, I'd say like with the wave of these psychedelics that are coming in, we're seeing an incredible response. So I think we're actually going to see some really great things. And there's nothing better than seeing that happen for patients. And especially when your families are touched by it, you're kind of even equally, you have this like bigger push to it. So there's that, I think. And I think what Christian's saying is like, it's clinical trials since my first job. So it's like, I love everything that I do. And Christian and I have known each other for at least 2 decades, maybe more. And that common group trying to solve problems, in these therapeutic spaces are incredibly rewarding. It's like becomes like part of who you are, not like a job.
Yeah, it becomes such an intimate relationship that you build because of, the challenges that you face and the uniqueness of it and the camaraderie and the relationships. It's really, really great to see. We know that sponsors and CROs have a lot of options when it comes to the different partners that they work with and the different organizations and the directions that they want to take with their portfolio. So Sean, maybe start us off talking about what types of things you had to get right to earn trust in this space.
So I'd say the number one thing when I read that or see that is, what did we get right? You're only as good as your last study. So if you don't perform, you're probably not going to get the work. And honestly, you learn pretty quickly that when you don't do well, you own it. You own it, you come back with solutions, you don't come back with complaints and problems. And then an element of this too is like where the people that we have in our offices that are fighting these diseases are usually touched and connected to it. So when you find a group of people that are trying to find a cure or a cause to help stop these diseases, it becomes like a force. So we'll stop at nothing to try to help people with these diseases. It's beyond just, a business. It's a mission.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that mentality, right? I want your perspective on this as well. But that mentality most certainly directly translates into the operation and the execution of that clinical trial as a result. That, like you said, Sean, that personal investment into the outcome of what's happening carries a different connotation than someone who's treating it simply like a business. So I think that's an important distinction.
That's their baby. And we're trying to take their baby across the line. I always say we're their first stop at like babysitting their child, and they're dropping them off at our house. And it's like, we try to take care of it just like it's our own child.
And then give them the report card of all the data at the end of the day, right? Exactly.
Yes.
Christian, how about you? I mean, what kinds of things from your perspective have earned trust and what needs to be done right in order to maintain that?
To piggyback off of even what Sean said is the studies are complex. Anxiety is like a 90% screen fail rate in some of these trials right now. Alzheimer's, what do they say, Sean? It's like 2% of patients that have Alzheimer's actually qualify for Alzheimer's. So the difficulty is immense. So even when as Sean said, you're only good as your last trial, which makes sense. But sometimes I always wish, especially on the site side, like if you can communicate yourself, if you can communicate through the ups and downs of these trials, you will come out successful, even if you don't meet exactly what you thought because of the difficulty. So ultimately to me is if you're good at communication, you understand enough about how to operationalize these things and where staff and recruitment strategies, whatever it is, you will tend to do really well. Having said that, because I talked about earlier how the space is very tight knit, people stay in the space, they don't forget. So if you do make some of those mistakes, they'll follow you because they don't forget.
I follow you much closer.
Yeah.
I think he's right, though. Like investigator communication and engagement, it means as much as the numbers you promise. It's like when they're communicating, what goes right and goes wrong, it's like, it's super valuable.
Yeah, excellent points. Well, I want to kind of continue that thread a little bit here. As you guys both articulated, we do feel like we're at this inflection point, this culmination of work in the CNS space now with a lot of really interesting approvals and strategies and momentum across all these various indications that fall into the CNS bucket. But Christian, what does that mean to you, right? I mean, both of you guys have been in this space long enough to have seen where all the work that it's taken to get here. So what does that mean and how is it shaping where you take your organization and the work that you guys are doing?
I think if you look at each CNS as a global kind of term, and then you break it into psychiatry and neurology, for us, we are trying to foster good clinical trials through sites that need some support and infrastructure, but to do really well in CNS. I mean, CNS, whether it's a psychiatrist first or a neurologist kind of first site, we are trying to help sites be successful. I mean, you can be good at both, but you tend to be good at one before you're good at another. Psychiatry, you can do Alzheimer's, maybe the late stage Alzheimer's, and then neurologist is going to do maybe more the early side. And of course, they might not get a shot at some of the psychiatry indications like psychedelics, even though they do have the opportunity to. But yeah, for us, we're going to continue to focus on how do we centralize data. How do we get the right team members that understand CNS, that are kind of project managing across the site, solving the problems, talking to the CROs, talking to the sponsors, making sure sites have what they need. And we put in our post, so I'm going to stop with this, even though everybody's throwing AI so much in every conversation, and I love AI as well. But Sean, I don't know about you, but since we just came out of ASCP last week, every sponsor and CRO in our meetings, they came in, they're like, yeah, we want to get back to trying to get closer to the sites. I just thought that was interesting. Everybody said that in their own way, but they did not say the AI thing in CNS.
Sean, how about your perspective on that? I mean, how is it shaping the direction that you're taking K2?
You're hitting a point that like on the neuro side too, like when you look at the biomarkers and the digital ways to identify patients, I've never seen studies in some of these spaces go as fast as they're going. So sites that I think that were less good at clinical diagnostics are performing at higher clips. So for us, we have to get faster, we have to get bigger, we have to get smarter. And so we're constantly thinking about how to change our recruitment efforts. And then now that you don't have a 12-month enrollment period, you have 6 months. It just changes the whole dynamic of how the offices are running. So for us, it's like, I keep calling it like you got to flex or pivot, constantly, because the trials are fairly unpredictable on how fast they go. So it just means it's more of a challenge. I think you just need to have, you got to staff up. You got to get really creative on the recruitment. Basically, you got to create cohorts that are ready before the trials actually begin. And those are the sorts of things that we're kind of preparing for, like for these disease states. Less in psychiatry, I think, than it is in like neuro, but it is happening there too.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Christian. I think that's a great place for us to start to kind of move into closing out the conversation here. But, piggybacking on that, Sean, when we look 5 or 10 years out, how do some of those things translate into success for your organization or even just for CNS research as a enterprise?
I personally believe that this biomarker, this precision health will emerge at a way that we haven't seen ever before. And I think that we'll be looking at patients without disease that have risk factors to disease or genetic vulnerability. And we'll be utilizing cell and gene therapy or therapies before the disease hits.
It's pretty exciting to be able to not even have to wait for a patient to come in with presenting disease and be able to alter the course of their lives before they even have to have anything to worry about. It's pretty exciting. Christian, anything to add? What is your perspective on the 5 to 10 year outlook for your organization or CNS research?
There's going to be 5 to 50 different Seans, but they're AI versions of Sean. Oh, since Sean hit the neuro side, on the psychiatry side, I honestly think the psychedelics, and just so you know, like not even my data, Sightline, a quote on the source here, it's like for the first year in like 20 years, oncology studies are down and CNS studies are up. So you basically have the pendulum for CNS kind of moving faster than oncology right now, which is interesting. But just to get back to my point, the psychedelics are starting to crawl into other therapeutic areas. We tend to think of them right now for psychiatry. The end result of psychedelics is you basically take people off drugs, which psychiatry has never had treatment that, you basically had a similar type of result. And then you're starting to see it in women's health now. You're starting to see it in pain. So I think 5 years out, because I find myself talking about CNS so much for people, especially for good sites that need something like that, have the potential to get into something like this to be better. I find myself always talking about it because I think they're just getting started. I think it's going to be around a long time. It seems like the runway just started. And I think that the window of opportunity is immense. And it's kind of like a GLP-1 is the cure. It seems like it's used for everything, or it's going to be used for everything. That's whether we like it or not. But psychedelics is kind of like the sleeper that's going to come out of nowhere that's going to have a similar type of result for many things dealing with the brain. I'm excited to continue to watch it and hopefully see 15 to 50 different AI versions of Sean by the time I'm done.
What do you think the buzzword will be in 5 years? Not virtual or AI or diversity. What's it going to be in 5 years? What's the word?
Robot.
Oh, you got to guess. This is like a time capsule.
I mean, I couldn't even guess what's happening now a year ago, let alone 5 years from now. Gene therapy.
Prevention. It's preventative health now, not disease.
Something with aging, right? Because we're all going to not age anymore soon. I mean, that's the
longevity.
Yeah, longevity. Better word.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you both. It was great to have this conversation and learn about, what your organizations are doing kind of collaboratively and the future direction of treating a really, really complex therapeutic area. So thank you guys both for the conversation today.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the time, Jimmy.
And for those listening, we look forward to continuing discussions like this, highlighting other important pieces of information and industry-changing initiatives through other avenues within SCRS, like our site-facing publications, as well as our events that are available on myscrs.org. I look forward to having more conversations like this in the future. But for now, thanks for listening, tuning in, and until next time.